guys, and welcome back. Today we're going to be covering some questions off the ACT. Now we're going to focus fire specific questions about FOIL, factoring, and any type of question related to that content. So go ahead and stick with me because we're going to go ahead and jump right into the questions for today.
Function notation, let's plug it in. So we got a -3 on the inside of this function f, so we just got to plug that in for everywhere we see an x. So first off, let's start with this squared. -3 squared is going to give me a +9. 9 times that 3 is going to give me a 27. Then we have plus 7 times the -3, which is going to give us a -21. And then we still have that -8. Now notice here we have a -21 and a -8, so altogether that's going to give us a -29. And we have a +27, so that's going to end up netting us a -2 total, which is answer G. Don't worry, when they have you multiply all of these guys together, they're not looking for the whole thing, they're just looking for the first term and the last term. So what do they mean by the first term? They mean if I take each one of these first guys and multiply them down the row, what does that give us? Well, this would be x times x, which is x squared, times another x is x to the third, to the fourth, and that last one would put us x to the fifth. That means we're looking at one of these three. Now, when I'm looking at these numbers, we're multiplying the back numbers to each one of these, and the biggest trick here is going to be the negatives, making sure we're either positive or negative in the end. So 6 times 5 is going to give me 30, and both of those are negative, so that will be positive. But when we multiply that 30 by 4, that's going to give us 120, and that's negative. Now multiply by a -3 will give us 360, and that's now positive. Multiply that by 2, and that's going to be 720, and that's now negative. So our final answer should be C. Here's another one about function notation. So in this case, when you see the 3 inside, that means you're plugging it into that equation. Now it does say after we plug them into f and then into g, we're going to subtract the 2. So let's go ahead and plug the 3 in for x right here. Well, that means 2 to the third power. That means 2 times 2 times 2. That's going to give us 8, and 8 times that 5 is going to give us 40. Now we got to plug that 3 into this equation as well. 10 times 3 is 30, so that's an easy one. And then it says we have to subtract those two answers. So in this case, we're looking at 40 minus 30, which is going to give us an answer of B, 10. So we have another function notation question here where we're just going to be plugging in 1.5 in for every x in this equation. So let's start off here. 1.5 squared, if you're using a calculator, would tell you is 2.25. And when you multiply that by 4, it's going to give you 9. Now don't forget that negative out front, so we have -9 there. Now 1.5 times 20, well, you can just take half of it and add it to it, so 20 plus 10 would give me 30. Or you could just plug that in a calculator as well and get your answer. And we still have that 32. So if we go ahead and do -9 plus 30 plus 32, that's going to give us a final answer of 53, which is answer H. So for number 13, we're just simplifying this expression right here. They claim that x is not equal to 0 just to ensure the fact that the bottom will never be equal to 0 because that would make this whole thing undefined. So let's go ahead and divide. Now in this case, we're doing the opposite of multiplying each term. We're dividing each term by this number. So when you're doing 15x squared divided by 5x, first let's deal with the numbers out front. 15 divided by 5 is just 3. Then, if you have x squared and you're taking one of those x's away, you'll be left with just one x. Then over here, we have plus 25 divided by 5 is going to give us 5, and the x divided by an x will cancel the x out entirely, meaning our final answer is 3x plus 5, which is answer C. So in this question, we have a bank account that has $2,000 in it. We're not going to put any more in or take any more out. And every 5 years, it's going to double, meaning multiplying it by 2. Now it says after 40 years, how much will there be? Well, that means that we're going to be taking this 2,000, and then we're going to be multiplying it by 2 every time we hit 5 years. The way I'm going to do that is 2 raised to the x power for however many times we hit 5 years. So we're going to be multiplying those together. Well, 40 is 8 groups of 5. So that means that we actually have 2 to the 8th power right here. Now, if I do 2 to the 8th power, that ends up actually giving you 256. And if you use a calculator to multiply the two of these together, you find out that the final amount there would be D, 512,000. Alright, so this question says, for what value of k is x equals 2 a solution for this equation right here? So what I'm going to do is plug in this 2 for the x and see what we're left with for the equation. So 2 squared is going to give me 4 minus 2 times 8, which is going to be 16. And then we still have that plus k equals 0. Well, 4 minus 16 is going to give me -12. So what value would I need to add to -12 in order to get back to 0? Well, that's easy. That's just going to be +12. Answer D. So in question 13, we're going to use factoring to solve this equation right here. Now, what I'm going to do is take this right here and factor it into two sets of parentheses. And the way I'm going to do that is by just taking my x out front, and then I need to find two numbers that multiply to the back but add to the middle. In this case, that middle is a 1. You don't see it, but that's because it's implied. So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 30 but add to a positive 1. We're going to end up using 6 and negative 5 because the two of them fulfill those requirements. So I'm going to put in here plus 6 and minus 5. Now it says that we need to do the sum of the two solutions, which means we're setting this equal to 0. So our two solutions is actually going to be when you subtract this 6 to the other side, giving me negative 6, and when you add the 5 to the other side, giving me a positive 5. Those are the two solutions. So the sum would be when you add those two together. So negative 6 plus 5 is going to give me C, negative 1. In 15, we're finding two binomials with integer coefficients that will end up being factored out from this guy right here, which means we're trying to find two numbers that multiply to this back and add to the negative 1 in the middle. Now, in this case, if I write these out, we're going to have the x in front for both because there's no number in front of this x squared. And then we're going to look for those two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to negative 1. In this case, that's going to be negative 6 and a positive 5 because they fulfill those two requirements. So we'll go ahead and plug those in, negative 6, positive 5. And looking here, it says negative 6 is one of them. What's the other? So we're just looking for our x plus 5, which is answer D. So a lot of times kids see two sets of parentheses and they automatically think that they're multiplying these out or something. But in this case, we're actually just subtracting the two terms, which means I'm just going to go ahead and combine like terms here after I distribute this negative to everywhere inside of here. So first off, distributing the negative just switches the signs of each term. So it's going to become a positive 1, a negative 5x, and a negative 2x squared. Now let's go ahead and combine. So we have a 4x squared and a negative 2x squared. Well, 4 minus 2 is going to give me 2x squared. We have a negative 3x and a negative 5x, which is going to give me a negative 8x when you combine them together. And then we have a positive 7 and a positive 1, which is going to give me plus 8. So if I'm looking through my options here, that looks like option A.
Well, that's all the questions we're going to cover today, so thanks for joining me. And remember, if you want to see any other test prep type questions, go ahead and check out some of these other videos over here, or keep checking back for some new content. Again, my name is MrCaproni, and thanks for joining me today.